Hey everyone, hi, welcome. Actually, I'm gonna get in the center. Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read in November. The main event that I participated in was Nonfiction November, hosted by the wonderful Olive at the channel A Book Olive. And so I have several more. I can hear my children yelling. It's very indicative of one of my videos. I have several more nonfiction books than I normally would in a wrap up. And I also didn't just stick with nonfiction. I read some fiction books as well. So if you are new here, I will say hi. A special welcome to you. And my name is Shelly. I love books and reading. I sometimes get distracted. There is almost always some background noise in my videos because I have 2 children and a sweet pup, and my life is full and chaotic. The underlining theme of my channel is fostering a sense of contentment, whether it be in my reading life or in other things. So if you are enjoying the vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe. Without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I'll start my way with the soft, delicate DNF and work my way towards the book, the nonfiction book that I am currently reading still. So, The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell. I started this with quite a bit of enthusiasm. This was, and I guess still is, a buddy read with Kate Howe. And it started off interestingly. There was a very meandering quality to The Life of Charlotte Bronte. I wondered, and Kate Howe posited, whether or not, or whether this meanderingness, this sort of a bit frenetic almost in the writing, though I don't think it was intentional. I think it came from a place of Gaskell being really excited and wanting to share about the Brontes' town, the history of the town, the way the town looked, the history of certain individuals of the town members, and it felt like it lacked quite a bit of focus. And then we finally, in a lot of ways, like several chapters in, it feels like we are finally getting to Charlotte Bronte and her family and the way that her family functions. And by the time I had gotten to that part, I think I was like 10 or 12 chapters in, I was a bit lost. She had lost my enthusiasm. All of my excitement about reading the book was used up in those, to push through those first 5 or 6 chapters. And then even as the book got more interesting, I lacked the focus or the energy to continue to pick it up, even though it had gotten better the more she focused on her subject, the more that Gaskell focused on her subject. So I made the decision to gently put aside this book for now. It's not going anywhere. It's on my Kindle. And I will make a gentle goal to finish volume 1 by the end of the year. And then I'll be able to start afresh with volume 2 at some point in time. But it was an odd reading experience. I don't read very many biographies, and I certainly don't read biographies in which the writer, the biographer, is a contemporary of their subject. And I wonder if it was a little too far outside my comfort zone, that perhaps if I started with a biography of the Brontes and then worked my way to Gaskell's description and book on Charlotte, it would have maybe rendered me a bit of a different reader, if I grew a little bit in that subject and in that genre. Even if I had read 1 or 2 other biographies one biography about the Brontes, if that would just help shape my experience with the book. Needless to say, the book didn't quite work for me as much as I really wanted it to. I'll work my way to my favorite nonfiction read. So one book that I felt so proud of finishing, since I started this a couple of years ago and softly DNF'd it, and then I had to kind of go back in. I had to start from the beginning and get myself to really read the whole thing. And the book is The Proud Boys in the White Ethno-State by Alexandria Ministerne. This fit perfectly with the Nonfiction November prompt web, since they're talking about extremist internet groups. And this was fascinating, considering the way that extremist groups have popped up very frequently here in the US, and it's been a huge problem, to say, or an issue that we're dealing with in the US, the way that extremist groups are forming online and then doing things out in the world that are harmful. So this was Alexandria Ministerne's incredible research about how people get induced into extremist groups, particularly groups such as the Proud Boys or those who were on the extreme right here in the US. So this was fascinating. I will have to say, hats off to Alexandria Ministerne, because every chapter read like an extremely concise, well-developed, well-edited essay about that topic. It was very, very tight. And it's a very slim book. There's no repetition. It's extremely focused on its subject. And there is so much data and information she packs into this book. It's dense and it is quite readable. There were some times where she is just explaining something that is so outside of my realm of knowledge that it took a little while for it to click, or I'd have to reread a couple of times for me to understand the point she was driving at, or that particular section, because I'm no expert on this subject. So in terms of reading, it was an extremely rewarding read, even though it was in some parts tough to get through. My favorite part was about the trad wife, the traditional wife, and the way that traditional wives, specifically the internet culture of a trad wife, and the way that dovetails with extremism. I thought that was really fascinating, and I could have read an entire book on that. But this was covering a lot more topics and a lot more subgroups, and a lot more, a variety of different ways and people's beliefs, and the way that those people and their beliefs are sometimes fed on by others in order to induct them into this cult-like thinking. It was very interesting, very, very interesting. My favorite nonfiction I read this month. The next book I'm currently reading, and it's in competition with my favorite, but I am not finished with it yet. So there's that. But it is The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. My gracious, this was fantastic on a multitude of different levels. This was amazing. This tells okay, how do I even start? So Cy Montgomery is a writer, and the way she gathers her information is that she's very immersive in her subject. So her subject for this book was octopuses. And she even says on the first page, which I did not know, that it is not octopi for the plural for octopuses. It is octopuses for the plural for many octopus. So I thought that was immediately, she got me all interested, because I love to learn new things, and I was just thrilled. Even from that little fact, I was thrilled. she decides to visit and really immerse herself in the world. She decides to visit an aquarium in order, very, very often, and for many hours at a time, in order for her to immerse herself in the learning of octopuses or to learn about octopuses. And it was amazing because Sai herself has this interest in octopuses. Oh my goodness, how many times can I say octopuses? She has this interest in her subject and the history of the way this creature has been written about in literature. So not only did she reference a bunch of literature in which this creature is this, nemesis to humans, and it's depicted as this evil thing or this conniving thing. So she's kind of like, I feel like she was getting on my level. Like, well, I've heard, like, octopuses are often depicted as this, like, creature that has, that's always trying to, like, get its tentacles around a boat so it can sink it, or, it squirts ink and it's just trying to attack us humans, or something like that. And what I came to find out, and what she ends up writing about, is the immense curiosity an octopus has, and the way that they display their curiosity. That was one of the nonfiction November words. So octopuses are curious, clever creatures. I would have never, before reading this book, I would have never thought that an octopus and a dog would have something in common. And I've come to find out that octopuses and dogs have more in common than one would think, except that octopuses are smarter, cleverer, more moody than a dog, or at least the dogs that I've interacted with. And I think the key to this book, which is a celebration in sea creatures that focuses on a single subject, the octopus. I think what's fantastic about it is that I, the reader, could feel Sy Montgomery, the writer's excitement, thrill, joy, curiosity in her writing in this book. And it was infectious. Her excitement was absolutely infectious. The things that she wondered about, I started to wonder about. The things that she was excited about, I started to get excited about. The things that she was over the moon for, I was over the moon for. And consequently, the things that she became sad about, affected me deeply as well. And that was such a fantastic experience. I think as a reader for me, I think it really speaks to her ability as a writer. I thought she did such a great job showing who she was as a person, curious, adventurous, like willing to keep trying, but also like she's a great writer for being able to communicate that all in words. And it was such a joy. Believe me, if you're like, Shelley, you've spoiled it all. I can't read it now because you've talked about it for about 5 minutes. No, there's so much in here to love, to adore, to explore. It's amazing, and I am so thrilled that I finally read this. Okay, the book that I'm currently reading, my gracious me, and that I'm not quite done with. I'm about halfway through, I think maybe less than, but it is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I don't keep up with celebrities. I don't watch TV anymore. I'm not up on who's doing what. I almost find it comical. My younger self would be so ashamed of this version of me because I got really into celebrities when I was like 12, 13, 14, 15, and I had my celebrity crushes and all that. So anyways, the point is, this version of me now, at the age that I am now, I don't follow celebrity like at all. So I think that Trevor Noah was the host of The Daily Show, right? I think it says it. Yeah, The Daily Show. Okay, I'm not off. I don't know who he is really. I don't care though. I mean, I care. I care that, you know, he has a thriving career. This book is phenomenal in that he's so funny. Trevor Noah is hilarious. And it's not only funny, but so the whole thing is that black and white couples, like a person for whom the couple is made, if the couple is made up of a black person and a white person in South Africa during the time in which Trevor Noah was born, if they had a child together, whether it be a black man with a white woman or a white man with a black woman, that was against the law. And so his mother was South African. She was a black woman. And she got together with a white man and they created Trevor Noah. And so he truly was born a crime. And he explains this at the very, very beginning. So I'm really giving nothing away. And I could not have told you very much about apartheid and the way the country was set up and the way that it affected its citizens. Trevor Noah does an amazing job explaining apartheid and the way that people were really factioned off, like they were separated in their own groups, and the way that that really affected his life, both as a child with his mother and as he grows up. It's super interesting throughout the entire book. Even though he's tackling extremely heavy topics, like what it's like to be living as a embodiment of a crime in a country that is so focused on race, and where that is a huge point of contention, and the way that the country was built is built on race and such. And the way that things had to be separated out, and the perils of his country, which it sounds dangerous to say the least. Throughout all of that, there is like this insane, wonderful, amazing humor. I don't know how he does it. I'm like, one moment, I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, that sounds harrowing and awful. And on the other hand, I'm like snickering because it's so funny. He just has fantastic comedic timing that shows through in this book. I'm loving it. It's so funny. I'm just kind of, I don't know. There's no real reason as to why it's taking me a little while to get through this. I've picked this up. I do have it on audio as well. Audio is amazing because he narrates himself and he's hilarious. I'm like, I don't know who Trevor Noah is, but I want to. He's so funny. I'm just not quite finished it yet, but I'm really enjoying where I'm at with it. And I have every intention of finishing this in December. We're done with nonfiction. Y'all know that I don't do star ratings. My nonfiction reading was so much stronger than my fiction reading. If I did do star ratings, or the easiest way to communicate you all in booktube lingo is that I do not have any 5-star fiction reads this month. So I'll start with my DNF. My DNF is a very popular book, y'all. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry. It is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. This is about an orc opening a coffee shop. It even says it is high fantasy with low stakes. That is true. It's very low stakes. I even have my bookmark still in here. I got through 77 pages of this book, so I did give it a solid try. It's said that it's cozy fantasy. Here's the deal. If I'm going to read something that is considered light, I want it to be really good at something, whether it be extremely good at atmosphere or character development or banter, like really sharp, witty banter. I want that from my books. Even if it's really light reading, I want it to excel at something. And this did not excel at anything, in my humble opinion. The atmosphere was cozy. yes, the orc is trying to become a different person, one that doesn't kill people. And I do love coffee. There was I just got to the point where I felt like I just wasn't reading a very well written book. The dialogue wasn't very sharp. The banter, the characters were pretty flat. The atmosphere was pretty mundane. And though I thought it was cute that the orc was trying to open a coffee shop, something that I feel very passionate about. I love coffee shops. I just didn't care. And I didn't feel like Baldry's writing was keeping me engaged enough to want to keep reading. So as I didn't even mind that it was slow. It was just like nothing was standing out as sharp, whether it be like great characters, good plot points, even if it's low stakes. Wonderful like atmospheric writing to set the tone for the setting and the book. It just was all subpar for me. So my experience was that I was forcing myself to read this because this is one of the books for a larger project that I'm doing that I want to report back on. And I was like, I'm DNFing this. Like, I am DNFing this because I don't even want to pick it up. I was like rushing through to see if I can get to the next chapter really quickly. I was like really trying to speed read through it. I was like, okay, if I pick this up and I can get through the next chapter, I'll speed read through it. And I was doing these like calculations in my head where I was like, then I can finish this book in these many days if I read 2 chapters a day, and I could speed read through them, so it'll only take me 20 minutes each. And I didn't want to live my life like that. I was like, that means that you were not enjoying this, Shelley. So DNF it. And I did, and I was relieved. And I knew that it was a good decision because I was so relieved to stop reading this book. So, did not work for me. Sorry, not sorry. Let's move on. Next up, I have Elizabeth George's Well Schooled in Murder. This is the 3rd book in the Linley series. This is the 4th book I've read in the series. I read the 4th book 3rd and this 3rd book 4th. This is about a murder of a young boy at a prestigious school in England. Linley is called to the case. It's also, I believe it's maybe Linley's alma mater. He's helping out somebody he knew in school to investigate the murder. So here's what I love about Elizabeth George. She has fantastic characters. Her mysteries are solid. Her characters are amazing. Parallel to none. I love her characters. This book was quite heavy on plot compared to some of her other books and light in character development. And I found the most rewarding parts were the parts when she developed the characters. This was one of the first books that I felt like the whole plot and all of the twists and turns and all of it got away from her a little bit. It made sense. Like, there wasn't gaping plot holes or anything like that. It just felt like she was trying to put too much in, too many twists and turns, too much, like, betrayal and connections that were a little far-fetched. And in that way, this one didn't work super great. Like, it was my least favorite, I think, of the Elizabeth George mysteries. I still love her books. I still want to keep reading the series. And the book itself wasn't a bad book necessarily. It just, again, I think it got away from her a little bit. And I could definitely feel that as she was trying to wrap everything up, and it felt like an enormous present. And she's trying to like get it all covered and tape it all up to make it look really nice and for it to all make sense. And ultimately, at the end of it all, when you're like observing the present from all sides, when you're finished and you're like, it doesn't not work. It's just not your best work, And it's a little funky. And that's ultimately just how I felt about the book. But it was still good. And I love her writing. It's so good. So good. Next up, I read The Street by Ann Petrie. I read this with the Up to No Good book club. We are a book club and several of us have channels. If you're interested in the members of the club, I will leave everyone linked down below. This was our pick for November. And Ann Petrie this book was first published in 1946. The Street tells the story of Letty, who needs to move on from her current living situation, which is eventually told to the readers. and she must move on, and she finds this apartment, and it's a not good, even, it's a wretched apartment in an awful building on a terrible street on the bad side of town. Letty is a single mother. She is raising her son, who is 7 years old or 8 years old. As a beautiful Black woman, we get this perspective of her struggle through life and her jobs and trying to get ahead. So this book is known, Ann Petry's book is known to have been one of the first book written by a Black woman. This was published in 1946 to have sold over 1 million copies. Her writing is so fluid. We're in the mind of Letty, we're in the mind of other characters, we're seeing the way that they see things, and we're getting, a lot of different perspectives on the situations that Letty is in, and her little boy. And in that way, the read was incredibly pleasurable. I will say it is a mixed read for me, because I could see where the story was going, and I wanted Petry to surprise me. I wanted there to be a twist. I wanted it to be a hopeful twist. And instead it was, to me, a little bit bleak and off the rails. And it didn't quite work. I would say the ending, and sort of barreling towards the ending, I wanted something that really exemplified like strength and hope. And I didn't get that. And maybe that is a me problem. I could very much say that that's a me problem. That's what I wanted, and I didn't get what I wanted. But ultimately, I also struggled to like the characters because I felt in some ways they were constantly victim to their circumstances. There's something about that I didn't quite like, and that didn't quite sit well with me. I would imagine that if I reread this book, or maybe if I came at it from a different angle, if I had to write a paper on it, I could write a really convincing paper about how Ann Petry is so spot on with the way she's writing, and her writing being timeless, and these topics being very modern, and in some ways, like, the way that everything ended up was very true to life. And she spoke multitudes when it came to being ahead of her time, or sort of sadly that we haven't progressed since 1946. I feel like I could make really good points, but ultimately I don't know if I'll ever give up the fact that I was hoping for something different, that I really want. Maybe it spoke to the way I love the characters, and I just wanted better for them. And so it was hard because, when that didn't happen, when there was kind of a bleakness to it all, I felt quite down about the book. And it's hard for me to say that I liked it. So interesting, because I know that this is like the favorite read of many people I admire. Like, I know so many people I respect here on BookTube that I've said this book is amazing, and I could see why, but it wasn't exactly amazing for me. The book I think I like the most, and I also finished it the most recently. Well, there's another book that I like the most, but I'm not talking about it now because it's part of a different project. So even though I read it in November and I liked it the most, it's not being featured in this video. But the book I like the most, I think, even though it still wasn't like a 5-star read, was Jane Gardam's Old Filth. Now, filth, it stands for failed in London, try Hong Kong. Failed in London, try Hong Kong. It's about a lawyer who is at the end of his life and is contemplating what happened over the course of his life. Pretty early on, you get a sense that he's holding on to a secret. So there's that. That's at least kept me going. I wanted to know what happened at Maudid's house. And you get this sense of who he is through like different snippets of his life. There's a heavier focus on his older life, what it was like when he lost his wife. You find that out right away. Like, those moments are explored. And then she spins back in time, and I think identifies some key points in his life that really shaped him when he was a younger man. And so, you kind of get this back and forth of time. And in some ways, it felt like sometimes it wasn't just within the chapter, it would be just within a section. It's like you're with Filth, whose name is Eddie or Teddy Feathers, depending on who you are and when you met filth in his life. So sometimes you're with him, and even when you're with him in like the present moment, like all of a sudden you're kind of back in time in his mind about like, what happened when he was younger, or contextualizing something that happened in his youth. And then you kind of spin forward back in time, and you're with Eddie Feathers sitting at the kitchen table about to drink tea or something like that. In that way, I really thought the writing, the language, the way the story was told was very clever. However, at the end of it all, there were still questions for me. Like, it wasn't all tied up, and not that it needed to be, but she got me so invested and so curious about Filth and his wife and their various friends, their interactions. Like, I wanted more. So it's not that it was a terrible read. She didn't give me everything I wanted. Same thing with The Street by Anne Petrie. It's like, you didn't give me everything I wanted for me, myself, Shelley Swearingen, as a reader. And that's okay. Though it did, in this book, it seemed a bit more like there were things that she left unfinished. And I kind of had that feeling. And then come to find out, and I knew this going in, but this book is a 4-book series or a 3-book series. I can't remember. And so later you get a book focused on his Filth's wife. And they have a very interesting marriage, as you'll come to find out. And so I wonder if some of the sort of gaps that she leaves in this book, she goes and fills in with the other books. And we get to know other characters along the way. And in a lot of ways, we'll get to know Filth more because we're getting the perspectives of those who were close to him about him. So I don't think it was, necessarily a mistake or anything, but there was a sense that I didn't get everything that I wanted. And as a reader, I want to be spoiled. I want to get everything that I wanted. So it was a solid book. It was a good book, but I can't say it was my favorite. And ultimately, that is it. I read a bunch of children's books this month. I have had a really fantastic, wonderful, amazing month, despite things not being like favorites of all time. I mean, that happened with nonfiction. I feel like The Soul of an Octopus and Born a Crime, even though it's a little early to tell with Born a Crime, those two are just amazing. They were amazing reads. Like, that's what has gotten me all like excited and excitable and wanting to talk to you all and gush about. Like, those two books are and just were amazing experiences. It was really the fiction that I felt like kind of let me down a little bit. And that is really interesting. I must know from you what won out this month. Like, if fiction and nonfiction were in a competition, what won out? Fiction or nonfiction? Nonfiction for me won with flying colors in terms of like enjoyment and fantastic reads. Though nonfiction wasn't bad. I mean, fiction wasn't bad. Fiction wasn't bad. Nonfiction won. Fiction wasn't bad. But I want to know, like, your favorite book, your favorite book you read this month. Whether it be nonfiction or fiction. I'm always looking for recommendations. I'm always looking to just, start a conversation in the comments. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all